Hello, this is Hunter McDermott with anyonecanplayguitar.org, and this is Lesson 1 in Music Theory Basics for Guitar. So today we'll be talking about the musical alphabet. So I tend to think of music as a language that has various pieces and parts just like English would have. So we have letters, and we use those letters to form words, and those words form sentences, and so on and so forth. So I think the best place is to start with the musical alphabet. So unlike English, we have only 12 letters, or 12 notes in music. So we have our 7. It's nice to think of them kind of laid out in this nice order here, because this is the way in which they move. So we have our 7 base letters, our natural notes as they're known. We have A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, after which it just goes right back around to the A. But that only takes up 7 notes. We have 5 other notes that are known as sharps and flats. So sharp, which looks kind of like a number sign here, represents when something is higher. So for example, A sharp is slightly higher than A. And then flat sort of looks like kind of like a lowercase b. It tells you that it's lower. So B flat would be lower than a B. So we have A, and then we have B, and then in between here we have A sharp and B flat. Now I put those in the same box because they are actually the same exact note. So there are 2 different names for the same thing. If I go and I sharp an A or I flat a B, I get the exact same note. Now later on we'll talk about why you would need both names and which name you would choose, but for now just make sure you understand that they're the same. So we have A sharp, and B flat as one note. B, C, then again we have C sharp and D flat, same thing. D, D sharp and E flat, same note. E, F, F sharp and G flat are the same note. G and G sharp and A flat are the same note. So after this G sharp note, or A flat, you just get back to A. So you just go right back to the beginning and you start the cycle all over again. So it just loops around over and over and over again. So it's helpful to define the distance between notes. We do that with 2 different kinds of steps. So we have half steps and we have whole steps. So half step is the smallest distance between 2 notes. So back to A, if I play A and then I go to an A sharp, I've moved from this block over to this block here. I have gone a half step. I use E and F as an example here as a half step because they're right next to each other. There's nothing between E and F. They're neighbors. So of course if we take 2 half steps and we piece them together, we would get a whole step. So up here I've got from C to D, for example, would be a whole step because we go a half step from C to C sharp, and then we go another half step, brings us over here to D. So C and D would be a whole step apart. Now there are a couple instances where there aren't sharps and flats between notes. One of those is between B and C, and the other is between E and F. So if you ever looked at a piano keyboard, you'll see there's a trio of black keys followed by a pair of black keys, and then the trio of black keys, and then so those are your sharps and flats. So in between the pair and the trio, you have these 2 notes that are right next to each other, 2 white keys, and those represent B and C and E and F. So those are only a half step apart. Good thing to memorize. Okay, so the way this works on the guitar is every single fret of your guitar is a half step. So grab your guitar. Here's mine. So let's look at our 6th string. So hopefully we already know that this 6th string, the low, deep string there, is tuned to an E note. This is in standard tuning, most common tuning for guitar. So if we're tuned to an E here, then what we want to do is move up to the 1st fret. So I go from playing it open to fretting it on fret number 1. So that means that I was here with the open string being E, and then I raised that pitch up by fretting it on fret 1. I have raised it up a half a step. So that E is now an F. So if I play open E, then I fret number 1, I am now playing an F. I have raised the pitch by a half a step. So if I raise the pitch another half a step, I go from from F up to F sharp. Now, I can also call that F sharp a G flat, same thing, whichever way you want to think of it. Alright, I go up another half step, so now I'm on fret 3. And now I'm playing a G. So F sharp goes up a half step and becomes G, or G flat goes up a half step and becomes G. Alright, so if I want to play a whole step, then I simply go up 2 frets. So here I am on 3, now I'm going to go up to 5. So I've gone from G, which is here, up 2 half steps, 2 frets, or I could consider it a whole step. So that's a half step here to the G sharp and A flat, then I go up 1 more half step and I've arrived back over here at this A note. So my 5th fret is A. Now a lot of people already kind of know that if they've ever done the whole relative tuning thing. So like the 5th fret of the 6th string is an A note, which should be the same as your next open string, string number 5. And then of course we can do that here, and that will give you D, and G, and so on and so forth. So that is the musical alphabet in a nutshell. So we learned that we have only 12 notes, which means pretty much all the music you've probably ever heard, at least in coming out of most countries, most Western music, is comprised of only 12 different notes. Now they span multiple octaves. You have high-pitched A's and low-pitched A's, but still an A. It's the same thing. So we have 12 of them, and this is the order in which they are organized. You could also call this whole thing, if you didn't want to call it the musical alphabet, you could call it the chromatic scale. So the scale that includes all of the notes. If you ever think about jazz music, you could consider a lot of that stuff using the chromatic scale. They just kind of disregard keys altogether and just play whatever note they want. There's a lot of theory behind that, though, of course. So we learned that 1 fret equals a half step being from one of these blocks to any of the other block right next to it, either going up or down. And that a whole step would just be 2 of those half steps together. Anytime you see a sharp or a flat, so sharps and flats are, there's the noun form and then there's the verb form, which we'll look at a little bit later. So for now I want to think of A sharp as it's simply its name. It is an A sharp note. Now there is another way of using that term where you can sharp a note. So say I have an A and I sharp it, I get A sharp. But if I have A sharp and I sharp it, then what I'm doing is I'm raising it up by a half a step. So if I sharp an A sharp, I actually get B. But don't worry about that too much right now. We'll get into that form of it a little bit later. But there you go. So that's the musical alphabet in a nutshell and how it corresponds to the guitar. If you got any questions or comments, please leave them. And stay tuned for lesson number 2. Thanks.